Alright, my name is Chelsea and I lost 40 pounds on a plant-based diet after struggling with my weight for literally decades. And the question that I've become most obsessed with over the past 6 years of maintaining that and then also coaching women inside of my program, Lean or Plants, is why the heck do some people succeed when they have everything stacked against them? And then why do some other people, when they know exactly what to do, they've read every single book, they have every single resource and privilege available to them, but they still consistently fail? What I'm going to say next cuts me to my core, because 6 months ago, I had a belief that every single person, if they had enough of the right resources, enough of the right tiny habits, enough of a mindset shift, they could actually change. Like, that every single person could be successful. I no longer believe that to be true. I now believe that some people just have what it takes to succeed, and they will, and some people simply do not. And you can move yourself from the do not category into the will succeed, guaranteed to succeed category. But if you are going to change, you're going to need to learn these 5 steps to success. Otherwise, you will never change. And this is how I'm able to stay lean 6 years on and know that I will never gain the weight back. Step 1 is to force your conditions to change rather than waiting for your conditions to change. This is where you take proactive action, which is that you create action, rather than reactive action, whereas you wait for action and then you respond to it. So this is the difference between saying, I'm going to wait until I have more time, or I'm going to wait until I'm less stressed, or I'm going to wait until my kids are older. You're waiting for a condition to change, as opposed to saying, I'm going to put a blocker on my phone so that I have more time, or I'm going to stop going to all these social obligations so that I have more time. It always is fascinating to me when you look at very successful people like Oprah, who have had an incredibly difficult upbringing. You often see this immense good that can come from terrible situations because someone has chosen to respond to those things in a positive way. And they become like this big part of their origin story. I think maybe the problem, or maybe the benefit for most people, depending on how you look at it, is that nothing all that bad or good tends to happen to us, and so we're not forced to change. If you have a heart attack, yeah, you're going to change your diet. If you get cancer, then sure, maybe you go to Mexico to try and find treatment, or spend the last few months with your family doing what you actually care about. Like, even for myself, with my family being on the benefit from the government and having no ability to work, feeling desperate to provide for my family, is kind of the catalyst that started me to create YouTube videos and to go on and create the coaching program that I have today. There was some kind of dire condition or some kind of catalyst that forced change. But you don't have to wait around for something like that to happen. You can force it to happen now. So here's what they could look like. I'll join a gym when I have more money. I'll join a gym now because I have no money, and it will force me to go and get creative. Or when I have more time, then I'll sign up for a half marathon. Instead, I'll sign up for a half marathon so that I'm forced to find time. Or I'll start eating healthy after I've eaten all the junk food. Instead, I'm going to throw out all the junk food so that I'm forced to eat healthy. Stop waiting for conditions to change and instead take proactive action to change those conditions. Successful people don't wait around for conditions to change. They change the conditions to force their behavior to change. Step number 2 is to take consistent action, not the right action, and let go of getting things right. By the way, every single one of these steps is about taking consistent action, because it is only through action that we actually change. We don't change by planning or thinking about it. We actually have to pick up a fork and eat the broccoli and do it. So the reason that these 5 things are so vital is that they force you to go from an inconsistent action taker to a consistent one. So if the second step is to take consistent action, we need to define what action isn't. Action is not being stuck in a planning phase. Action is not doing research. If I have a goal to lose 30 pounds over 6 months, then knowing exactly what to do, reading every single weight loss book, planning out what my perfect meals are going to look like, writing things down in a journal, all those things debatably are good, but if you don't actually take action, then they mean nothing. They're worthless. But the problem with the planning stage is it feels like we're taking action when we're not actually doing anything that moves the needle forward. And unsuccessful people always get stuck in this fake progress where they make a decision like joining a new gym or buying a new book or planning to do something on the 1st of January, but they don't actually have to put their money where their mouth is and do the damn thing. So the way to get out of this cycle is to just take an action rather than the right action. And a phrase that we always say in my house is just make a decision. Don't know how to make a perfect weight loss meal? Make a meal that has vegetables. Don't know exactly how to train for a half marathon, but you want to do that? get outside and actually run. One of the ways I force myself out of this planning stage is to identify where it feels scary or where I don't feel ready to take action, and that's when I want to take it anyway. I always want to take action before I feel ready, because if I feel ready, I've probably waited too long, and also I'm just never going to feel ready because I'm only going to learn through doing anyway. So if taking action feels scary and uncomfortable and you don't know exactly what you're doing, but you finish this video and you go right now and put a potato in the microwave and you eat it, or you eat some vegetables, or you get some steps in, then that is how you change. And you've just taught yourself to be an action taker rather than a procrastinator. Successful people always take action before they feel ready. They spend the bare minimum amount of time planning. They are not focused on getting things right. They are not focused on making the right decisions. They are just focused on taking action. Step number 3 is to break out of failure loops and instead create learning loops. One of the biggest mistakes that keeps people stuck is that when they fail, that becomes this downward spiral of more and more failure. So a failure loop is where you get stuck making the same mistake over and over again, or worse, in that downward spiral, but you don't actually learn from it. Whereas in a learning loop, you're still using failure, you're still experiencing the pain of failure, but you recognize the patterns, you adjust your behavior accordingly, you see that as a non-emotional, normal process to learning, and then you make a different decision afterwards that then propels you forward. And if you think about it again, like, this is all just about becoming a consistent action taker. Because if you fail and then give up, then you're not going to make progress towards your goal. Because you cannot avoid failure along the journey. Like, you're going to fail so much. I would even posit that the person who has seen more success than you, like myself, has just failed way more times, and they've just learned to deal with failure really, really well. And Winston Churchill actually said that success is just the ability to go from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Michael Jordan said, I have failed over and over in my life, and that is why I've succeeded. He just failed more than anyone else ever tried. I'm going to go one step further from just using failure. And I'm going to say that successful people, because I've seen this time and time again, actually seek out failure. Because they see failure as a way to learn, and if you can learn, then you can take more of the right kind of actions. So instead of avoiding failure, go and find it. I have on my wall "fail faster" to remind me to take action. Seeking failure as opposed to avoiding it has turned me into more of an action taker than I would have ever thought possible, because it removes the pressure of getting things right, and it instead puts the pressure to get things going. So the next time that you're thinking about, well, I don't want to do something, or maybe I'm going to fail, or maybe I did fail, I want you to think, the faster I fail is the faster I learn, if I use it well. So think of a recent failure and then ask yourself, what could I do differently in my system? How can I learn from that experience? What can it teach me? And then, like a scientist, you try that thing again, and if it doesn't work, try again. If it does, you just learned something. Congratulations, you win either way. Step 4 is to develop a bias of urgency. Successful people always look to take action now. Not next week, not next year, not tomorrow, now. Most people think that they have time, and we can almost convince ourselves that we will do something in the future, but a will do something is not action. Therefore, it never gets us results. The only thing that gets us results is what we do. It's retrospective. So in order to create momentum of action, we must have urgency, because we have to see that there is no future because we haven't done it yet. We can't have future action. We can only have either current or past action. And current or past action becomes evidence that we are an action taker, which therefore allows us to take more action because it becomes part of our identity and how we operate in every area of our life. Whereas if we are procrastinators and we think we have time and we don't have a sense of urgency, then we never become action takers because we can always put it off till tomorrow. If you won't take action now, what makes you think that you will take it at some other point? If you want to change who you are, you have to change the evidence of who you are today. And the proof of whether you will follow through on your goals is that you actually did. So anytime that your goals are future focused and you are not taking action, you are proving to yourself that you are not an action taker. So even if you do have future focused goals like losing 30 pounds, they have to become urgent in the day-to-day. Like, I will eat a pound of vegetables today, or I will eat a potato at every meal, or I will eat a 50-50 plate. The urgency must be today. Here's a little story on this from my own personal life and how I just continually am trying to have more urgency. So for a little while now, because of an identity and a lot of other things, I've been thinking, you know what, maybe I don't even want to have any processed food in my diet. And it's not because of making it easier for me to lose weight or be leaner or anything like that. It's more just about who do I want to be and how do I want to feel when I go out and I'm faced with processed food like ice creams or chips or anything like that. Am I making a decision that it's okay in the moment, or whether I'm going to do that when I travel, all these kind of things. And so I was saying to a friend of mine, Amy, Broccoli Mum, by the way, side quest here, if you want to learn the 5 stages of weight loss mastery, then we just released a membership community on School all about how to do this. And Amy and I have lost over 100 pounds together combined, and we've collectively kept off for more than 10 years. So go check that out if you're interested. But I was saying to her that I was thinking about this, like not having processed food, and she's like, okay, so if you're going to do this, when are you going to do it? And I was like, yeah, well, maybe I'll do this in like a couple of weeks or after I get home from America, because we're going to be in America for 2 weeks. And she's like, if you're going to do it, why don't you do it today? And I was like, damn. If I'm going to do it, why don't I do it today? Because it's easier to think, well, maybe I'll do it in the future. It's easy to convince yourself that you will do something. But when the rubber meets the road, if you are going to do something, then do it now. You do not have time. Our lives are so much shorter than we think they are. Every single successful person I've ever met makes decisions much quicker than anyone else, and they never think they have time. So adopt a bias of urgency. Step 5. This one's going to hit. It's hard. But you need to make a decision about who you are more loyal to, past versions of yourself or who you want to become. This is about shifting your identity. And at some point, you're going to have to pick a side. You cannot live in the old version of yourself with your old choices, your old friend groups, your old way of thinking about food, the old stories that you tell yourself, and still have a different result and a different outcome in the future. So do you want what you have now and who you are today, or are you prepared to give everything up so that you completely change that in order to have a different outcome? There is grief and there is cost involved in changing. There might be parts, in fact, there will be parts of yourself that you have to let die in order for her to thrive and to live and to grow. This is where you essentially kill your darlings. You go, I'm okay to die in this piece of me so that I can live in this other piece that I've made a decision is more important. That process feels horrible a lot of the time. But it feels worse when you're trying to live in 2 camps where you want the outcomes of who you could be, but you don't actually adopt the identity and you don't let this other person go. And loyalty to your old self could look like hanging out with the same kind of friends, saying that you're the fun girl or that you're helpful, or going with the flow, being chill, not taking up space at a restaurant, not ringing in advance, not being the planner, being the person that maybe drinks wine on the weekends. Anything associated with your old identity. Being loyal to your future self could look like saying no. It could look like taking up space. It could look like advocating for yourself. It could look like adopting a bias that you want to eat simply. You want to be boring. So for me, I adopt a bias of being a weirdo, of being misunderstood. I adopt an identity of being a little bit strange and being lazy. So then that is who I have become. And I'm okay with letting the girl that wanted to create all these elaborate salads and do tons of meal prep and think that I could do everything perfectly. She's gone. She's dead. She died a long time ago. And a lot of people that I've talked to who have seen success have had to let go of things like a foodie identity, or an identity where they will accommodate people in their home that don't eat the same way as them. Depending on what your specific roadblocks are, if you find that your mother-in-law brings cake over, for example, and you just kind of go for the flow and you're okay with that and you're appreciative of that and you're grateful for that because you're a helpful, grateful person, maybe you've got to identify with someone who is not helpful and grateful. Maybe you've got to identify with someone who's just a little bit of an asshole. I'm not saying that to be mean, but I'm saying what identities are actually going to serve you into who you want to become if you say that you want those outcomes. Maybe you do have to be, you know what, I appreciate that you bring this food over, but please don't do that anymore. And then the next time that they do, because they will, you say, you know what, I really can't have this food in my home. Please respect me by not bringing it in. And then the next time you do, you say, you know what, I don't actually want you coming to my home if you're not going to respect my boundaries. And I know that sounds harsh, but the one thing that is guaranteed is that if your identity and who you believe you are stays the same today, then you are not going to change. And that is a fact. I believe that everyone can change. I still believe that to my core. But I saw this quote on Instagram, which destroyed me the other day, and that was, you don't see potential in people, you just see what you would have done in their shoes. So I've genuinely, personally, stopped really seeing potential in people, and now I look for evidence. Do you have evidence that you put your money where your mouth is? Do you have evidence that you take urgent action? Do you have evidence that you get out of a planning phase and you actually go and eat the thing that you need to? Do you have evidence that you're willing to let go of old identities and do the thing that scares you most in order to become someone new? And if you don't have evidence, then the good news is you can start creating it with action. So I'd love to hear in the comments, what action have you been avoiding? What thing do you need to do? What can you do today when you leave this video right now that is going to prove to yourself that you are becoming an action taker? Drop it in the comments and let me know. And by the way, I did a much longer podcast episode about this topic, so if you want to dive really, really deep into the behavioral change science of how to change, then you can check out the link in the description. As always, I will see you next week for another video. I am so grateful that you are here watching, and I hope that you have found this helpful.